It is going to be an absolute gallop through one of the most profound business tools that you can possibly have in a social business, in a social enterprise. Your brand is more valuable to you than your core business, because brands do something very special. So I'm going to take you through some thinking on branding. This comes out of many, many, many years of work in the sector, in the area, and I hope you'll get a lot from it. I was absolutely gobsmacked by the amount of questions and interest from everybody in the first session. So here's a funny question. What's the difference that makes the difference about what you're doing? Do you know what the answer is?
You.
That enthusiasm, that vision, that amazingness that is you. Because without you, nothing is ever going to happen. And the trouble is, it's really hard to tell people it's about me, because it isn't about you. It's about what all of you together do with the people that you do with it. And it's such a fascinating area. I am absolutely passionate about this sector. 20 years ago, I was trained by Social Enterprise London as a business advisor in the sector. My esteemed colleagues went, you never catch on. I was working in a team of business advisors, business link, and then social and business, I can't see it happening. I'm going, John Lewis has been doing it a long time. There have been other people training a long time. It's so exciting. And for the last 20 years, I've been looking at what makes businesses grow. What is it that allows them to really grow? What was it that Nigel said? The big issue is one of the most trusted brands there is in the UK. Why? Why is it so trusted? How can you learn that stuff? And I have to say to you that the branding world don't like me very much, because I'm getting away with, I'm sort of showing you how to do things without smoke and mirrors. This is not difficult. It's taxing, it requires incredible determination, but you can all do it. And I have proved that. I have literally worked with thousands of businesses doing this. Thousands. I've been doing it for a long time, and I know it works. So how did I come to be in this world? Well, I think it was very interesting what Robert just said about having a passion. My father came to this country in 1939 on the kinder transport. He was a refugee. He had nothing but what he stood up in. And he absolutely loved the country that took him in. And because he loved that country, he was so delighted to get his British passport. He often used to say to me, this is a gift. And I'm going to do everything in my power to give back this wonderful, wonderful nation. And it drove him to be a very successful entrepreneur. And instead of just buying all the yachts in Marbella, he ploughed it back into this country, hundreds of projects. And what was really interesting, that hardly any of us, his family, knew. But when he died 20 years ago, I was speaking at his funeral. People were coming up to me going, you don't know this, but your dad did this. He funded our organisation. He supported this. And a little light grew in my head. I thought, and what's now? What's happening now? And interesting, his death, my beginning to train as a social enterprise advisor. Because what I want to do is, I want all of you to be unbelievably brilliant at business. I want you to be the best you can do. Why? Because you're doing it not for the boat in Marbella, you're doing it for your beneficiaries. And so you've got to learn this dance. And let me tell you, this is a dance. You've got to learn the steps. I dance Argentinian tango. You have to learn the steps. You know, it's sexy, that dance. You've got to be a bit sexy when it comes to marketing and branding. So I'm going to take you through a few of my ideas. It's a gallop. I'm so sorry it's a gallop. But I'm going to have to tell you some key things so that you know where we're going. So, it's a very powerful tool. And I love teaching this tool to people. It is going to tell you how to do it. I can't tell you all in a half an hour. The book will help you a bit more. Just sort of quickly flash that up. Those are some of the winners of the Social Enterprise Awards. Everything from a vegan and vegetarian restaurant in Birmingham, to community transport, to a social work project, to a student theatre, young people theatre, all part of the Social Enterprise Awards. How many of you are going to be in the Social Enterprise Awards next year? Gold? Gold? Yes? Go for it. Get out there. And people will hear about you. And they go, what a nice brand. You go, oh, yes. Okay? So that's just a quickie, just to tell, and if we had more time, I'd tell you more about it. So what is a brand? A brand is a living entity. It lives and breathes. Your brand is not your logo. Repeat after me. A brand is not a logo. It is more than that. If you think about your favourite brands, give me a favourite brand. It doesn't have to be a social enterprise one. It could be a charity, it could be a supermarket. Give me a favourite brand.
Ferrari.
See?
Ferrari.
Ferrari, yay! And when you think of yourself getting into Ferrari, you're thinking about, what does that say about me? Give me another one.
Guinness.
Guinness. And are you imagining it now? Ooh, that smooth feeling. And you're imagining being in the pub with your mates and having a nice night out. A brand lives where? In the mind, in the heart. We are not as rational as we think. We are emotional creatures. We buy with our heart. I sometimes wonder why I buy sort of a lot of shoes in my heart. Because my partner says, you don't need another pair of shoes, but I do. I so love them. I buy them with my heart. My favourite brand of shoes is called Fit Flops, because I can walk miles in them. I can give hundreds of presentations, and I still look quite cool in them. So, you know, we've all got our favourite brands. Is one of your brands going to be somebody's favourite social enterprise brand? I love that brand. I love that brand. I'm going to really want to buy into it. I want to support them. That passion. And it builds over time. I remember the Big Issue starting in London, and I so love talking to the vendors. Has anybody heard the story about the Big Issue vendor that has a cat? It's Bob the Cat. I was chatting to Bob the Cat just recently with his book. He's now got his own book. It's amazing, and the story of the Big Issue is in there, how the gentleman who owned the cat came to be able to write the story with the help of the Big Issue. So, you know, it's real. Thousands of small gestures, experiences, build a brand. Okay. There's a lot of writing. I'm not going to read all the writing, but brands are perceptions in the minds of your customers. And something very interesting happens to you guys in social enterprise, because you don't have just the one customer. You have lots of customers. I'm going to draw you a little diagram. If we are a supermarket, we have customer. Yeah? We have to sell our brand to that customer. Excuse me. If we're a social enterprise and we want to build a brand, we have to build it in 3 dimensions, because we do very clever and special things. We have our beneficiaries. How many people have got any beneficiaries? Yeah? If you haven't got any beneficiaries, you ain't a social enterprise, because there's no beneficiary. Your beneficiary might be in the environment. You might be protecting, you know, a place. It doesn't have to actually be people, but a lot of people, lots of social enterprises have got beneficiaries. So here is one audience. And isn't it interesting that Nigel was saying about the Scottish charity? Do the people who are the beneficiaries really rate what's being done with them and for them? Very important. So we've got to communicate our brand to our beneficiaries. The Big Issue does not have to go out and find vendors. They break the door down because they know what they're going to get. You've then got you've got a second audience, and here's an unusual one, because you might have, the lottery might have given you some pump priming, so they want to know how you're doing. So they are an audience. You might be working with the prison service. So you might have the prison service. One of the social enterprises I work with takes young offenders, retrains them in woodwork, sells the products that they make. So you will have other people, your local authority. Local authority might be wanting you to deal with them, you might be doing some work for them. That's another audience. And then the most important audience. Who is this audience? This is the audience that pays the money to you for the business transaction that you transact. Now, so I can see a gentleman here, I was trying on his very beautiful hand cream earlier, and I was looking how beautiful the packaging was. And there were the ladies selling the very nice chutneys. Beautiful packaging. Very important when you market to the public, because I am a very, very regular customer of other lovely hand creams. And I've got to be persuaded to buy that one. And why am I going to buy it? Because I know that it's serving some beneficiaries, and I really want to do that. But also, I've also got to know that that product is the best it can be. It's presented to me beautifully. Because unfortunately, these days customers are very savvy. And we had a big discussion earlier about perceptions. So branding in 3 dimensions, as I call it, is very important. And do you know why it works? It's because what is at the heart of all of your brands? I think it's your values. When I asked what's the difference that makes the difference, one of the most important differences that make the difference is your deep values, your raison d'etre, the reason you're doing this. And so when we're talking about a brand as a collection of perceptions of the mind of your customers, you know that you are building a reputation. It's what somebody says about you when you're out of the room. So it's really important that you pay attention to this very big power that you have. It's when you pay attention to the power of people's perceptions that you know you have to influence them. You have to talk to them. And it's really interesting that brands hit the bottom line. In other words, they make a profit because they engage all these people at an emotional level as well as a rational level. And as we said, people make emotionally based decisions. And of course, if they have a good experience, they want to rebuy and rebuy. So, we might say, oh, you need to go and buy that cosmetic, or go, because it's so beautiful. But look what else they do. I came across the lovely Smoothie Folk, Nice Smooth, lovely piece of graphic design there done. And talking to them and talking to the young people they help. I am going, if I was here for longer, I'd be straight down there, wouldn't I? To have one and have the experience. Those of you who run cafes, those of you who run things where you can engage the public a lot more, you've got to make sure your experience is the best. I'm always saying, I work with a community cafe down where I live, and I had to go and give them a bit of advice. I said, the coffee's not good enough. People want to support you, but it's got to be really good coffee. And please don't cover your cakes with cellophane, because I can't get all the nice juicy feelings when I walk in. I say, great big lovely cake, say, eat me, eat me. Especially because I know it's trained some lovely young people to be a chef and to be a pastry chef. So the whole experience is really important. You've got to be tough on yourself, because if I wanted to go to you, I really prefer the coffee over there, and I'm taking a friend out for coffee, I'm going to be like this, aren't I? Should I, shouldn't I? And there's no room now for mediocrity. I'm really tough on anybody. If they ask my advice, I have to go in and go, that's not good enough. It's nearly good enough. A few bits and bobs, in it, it'd be perfect. So it's very, very important that we give people such a great experience that they build a great perception in their mind, that they come and buy from us again and again, and that grows our business, does it not? Now this is yes, and this is no. Yes, yes, right? Because growing is good. Social enterprise growth is really good. It makes profit. We love the word profit. I keep saying to people, we're going to learn, we love profit, because we're not going to buy the boat in Marbella. Because we love profit, because we're going to do great stuff. So we do love profit. So, branding power, and it is powerful. If it wasn't powerful, none of the big people would be doing it. We're just driven by brands. And the reason it's very interesting is this. Do you remember when you were 16, you were putting on your lip gloss? In the 70s, we were dancing around handbags. Yeah, right? So why were we putting on the lip gloss and the glittery eyeshadow, do you think? What were we trying to do? We were trying to attract persons. Some of us might be trying to attract boys. Some of us might have been trying to attract others, but we were trying to make ourselves very attractive. And the thing about branding is that it is what I call an attraction strategy. It's a pull strategy. Now we have to do lots of pushing out messages, that's where we do some marketing. But the real thing is that we want people to be so enticed and engaged with us that they are naturally pulled towards us. And we've got all the wonderful social media that allow us to tell each other. So attraction has never been easier. You know, there's been such a proliferation of dating websites. You can easily attract people that way. There needs to be sort of that same equivalent for your social enterprise. How do you get people to engage with you? It's interesting that we have to sort of begin to build what I call the shorthand for what you do. Remember that song? It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. That gets results. Remember Bananarama? It was actually an old swing song, and I also dance swing. So yeah, it ain't what you do, what you do. And it's very, very important that every single one of you, even if we were a whole conference on cafes, and all of you were running a cafe, every single one of you would be doing it differently. Because it's your personality in there, it's the values you have, the raison d'etre, and you have to find ways to communicate that difference, that uniqueness. And that's what brands do. And they allow you to communicate with your audience and to receive feedback from your audience about whether they really, do they get it? Do they engage with it? I always say, people, your customers, will give you loads of brilliant ideas how to improve, what else they'd like to see. So the more you engage the audience, the stronger your brand works. And people like Innocent Smoothies, do you remember they used to have the banana hotline on the side? There was actually a girl who used to sit on the end of the phone going, "Good afternoon, banana hotline." I've got a very interesting phrase for you now. You've all got to say this after me. It says, plagiarize, plagiarize, let nothing evade your eyes. That comes from Tom Lehrer. And the reason you have to plagiarize, if you run a food operation and you like that idea of the customers being able to tell you, you could have your own version of a banana hotline. Just because Innocent did it doesn't mean to say you can't do it. So one of the things we have to do is branding is an organic and ongoing process. We have to constantly look what's going on out there and go, oh, that was a good idea. How does that inform what we're doing? That keeps us fresh, dynamic, interesting. And brands will go stale if they don't keep reinventing themselves. So you have to listen very hard. So in order to create the perception that you want your customers to have, you have to think what you are about. You really have to understand what you're about. Your personality, your image, your values, your culture. The book tells you a lot more how to analyse things, how to do things with that, blah, blah, blah. So you're not going to be left adrift with that. There's lots of help. And one of the things that's really important, I met this lovely lady downstairs who is, her company, she's a social enterprise, and it is the Arts Factory design company. Anybody use Arts Factory? Immediately, if not sooner, talk to this woman, because they are a social enterprise that does fantastic graphic design. Don't you love those cards? And they design the packaging, the logos and everything for the chutney company downstairs. And it's really important that you use good graphic design when you produce your logos, your marketing to your website. Because why? Because the customer is now very sophisticated. They won't just buy from you just because you're a nice, friendly, warm and cuddly organisation. They buy because it also looks cool, it says what it does on the can. And these organisations, these social enterprises for graphic design are fabulous because they're training young people in graphics, they're giving them the experience, and you get the benefit from that. Even if I always say, if you don't ask, you don't get. If you've got a really big graphic design company locally, and they do things, for their rugby stadium, you could say to them, oh, do you do some pro bono? We're a small social enterprise, but we want to look really good. We've got a complicated issue. Lots of people asking me about issues about where they've got a lot of complexity in the organisation. They need help with that. You must speak to the professionals, like you would speak to an accountant if you've got financial problems. So a brand's personality and image is really important. I was at a meeting when the guys from Innocent started, and they were showing me the logo before it went live. I said, what does that say to you? And I said, oh, it's a bit friendly, it's a bit approachable. So I think I might have been actually said it's a bit innocent, it's a bit naive probably. So, oh, that's great, Yvonne, exactly what we wanted, that's great, that's great. So it's really important that you're able to define your brand, the visual aspect of it, and understand what promises you're making. Because when I was showing you earlier, that we've got these three audiences, what's really important is that when you're communicating about your coffee shop or what you're running, you need to say to people, we do this because it's a great story. And look what we've done. And stories always sell. We always say, sell, not tell. Tell people about what you're doing and the great things that are happening. Let them sell you as well, like Robert would say, others sell you. But you've got to remember that, you benefit your stakeholders. They need to hear what you're up to. You've got that audience. Your beneficiaries, you want to engage with them. What do you need? How do you need it? How can we do things better? And also, you need to talk with your customers. How can we do that better? And if you do that, you will be able to evolve the promises you make to people. If you come to this cafe, this is going to happen. We always use fair trade coffee, or we bake our cakes locally on the premises, so they're fresh. But these are what I call commercial methodologies. And because we are absolutely loving profit, we know that we have to work in a very professional way. So you need to be able to find out what's the difference that makes the difference. If I could put myself into a million parts, I wouldn't have had to write the workbook, but I can't. And so I always say to people, I want you to be able to know this stuff. I want you to be articulate. I'll show you why in a minute. I want you to be able to translate that through all your design communication so it looks smart, that customers are really attracted to it. I want you to be able to use social media effectively so you know what to say and what not to say. And I want you to know what's the right type of marketing to do. And for years, I've worked with the Chartered Institute of Management and other things like that. There are professionals out there, and sometimes you've got to buy them in. It's a very great investment. Do not skim on the help. I worked with a social enterprise, the very first one I ever worked with, called Greenworks. And Colin rang me up and said, I've got this great idea, Yvonne. we're going to get young offenders, we're going to get all the old furniture from all the big bags that are throwing out. We're then going to convert it to something else, and we're going to do something else. And I went, okay, Colin, cup of tea. He said to me, I want to pay you. I went, delighted. And he said to me, we won the Queen's Award for Social Enterprise a couple of years back, and he's got me in the picture with him, and he went, that was the best few £100 I ever spent, because she set me right. We started right, we started with the right talk, we had the right ideas, we were really clear and businesslike when we started, and then we just went woof. And it's been franchise as a model, it's grown and grown and grown. And so I always say to people, please take advice. Really, there's loads of free advice on the web, there's loads of people who will help you, and sometimes you have to pay for it, but really work out what's right for you in your brand, because it really matters at an early stage. So I don't need to, don't need to tell you all this thing that's on the screen there, but you know there's a lot of competition out there. Increasingly, even in the third sector, very sad, the third sector organisations compete with one another. But if you can't collaborate, then you've got to find ways to stand yourselves out, and you have to be stood out in the crowd. If you're competing with, the world's, other cosmetics, you've got to stand out. There's thousands of chutney companies. You've got to stand out. Lovely gentleman making lovely benches. I said to him, can he ship one to Whitstable, which is on the east coast where I live? And he's going, I'm like, yeah, give me one, and I'll have it in my garden. Well, I'll buy one, put it in my garden, and I will tell everybody. Really important, because there's loads of people make benches, but I love his bench and I love where they come from. The other thing that we know in branding is that good experiences are things that people love to talk about, don't they? Oh, you should go to that little place down there, it's really lovely. There's a lovely little leaflet. I was talking to one of the girls downstairs, and she said, oh, well, inside our leaflet, we're in a bit of a remote place, but all the different places you can visit around us. And I thought, what a great idea is that? I mean, you should go there, because if you go there, you can then go to the Brecon Beacons. So it's really important that your audiences, or your customers, have a great experience so they can tell everybody. The gentleman downstairs who they do lots of lovely repairs for elderly folk, and they work with aged concern, he was saying, we don't capture the great experiences that, Auntie Dot had when we came to fix it all. So important that you capture what people say about you and tell stories. People love to tell the story about you. Your people talking about you is the great way to build your brand. And what we said about earlier, that if you've got a great, so you think about the prison service. I've worked quite a lot on and off with people who work in the prison service, and young offenders coming out, and they've got 20 places they can recommend. You want to be top of their hit parade, don't you, if you work with young offenders? You want them to say, actually, you should go to that project because they're really going to look after you there. They care deeply. So it's very, very important how you build your relationship with your audiences. Where the beneficiaries, it's really important to ask them what they want, what they've experienced, what they know, so you can communicate that, and not just in your impact assessment. Because these stories are the things that build perception. And we've got amazing ways of using social media now, but you see at the bottom, you have to be consistent. Therefore, you have to think very strategically about what you are doing and what you're saying. In competition with the rain on the roof. So, here are my little quick steps to success. If I got into the elevator with you around the corner and we only had from here to there to say what we did, could you do it? Could you do an elevator pitch? Could you be so succinct and go, we do this for this result? Really important. The more succinct you can be, the way that you describe what you do, the better. I want everybody to be able to say, these are our top 3 stories about what we do. Get them on your website. 3 case studies, 3 sets of comments, minimum. SWOT, you need to look at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats every 6 months, not once in a while, and go, what's changed in the landscape? How are we developing? We're still on our mission, we've still got our core things, but how are we going to develop with the landscape that's around us? And that's what entrepreneurial thinking is. Entrepreneurs are very opportunistic. The word opportunities is really important. So, fire away, what do you want to ask me? Because we got in some really good questions earlier.
Right, you're talking about being consistent
Yes.
with branding and building up your reputation. What if, after a certain length of time, you find that your branding just isn't working?
Yeah.
And you need a revamp.
Yeah.
So you think, right, we have to change it, but then you kind of lose any previous customers or any previous reputation you might have had, even though it might not be as good as you wanted. What's your advice there?
Well, there's 2 schools of thought. You have to say to it, is it the branding that's not working, or is it the business that's not working? Because sometimes people blame it on the brand, but actually it's the way they're running the business that's not working. Sometimes damage is done to a brand by the press often, or this is why I say tweeters beware, because you've got it's a double-edged sword. But there are times when there has to be an evolution of a physicality of a brand, a logo, whatever. And I try to say to people to go for evolution, not revolution. So find ways of keeping things that were there, that are still recognisable, maybe a colour or a shape, but bring it forward. But it's be very careful saying my branding isn't working. What you often find is your branding is outdated, and it just needs a little revamp. If you look at the, Shell, the petrol station, or BP, you look at how their logo has evolved over many, many years. There's not been revolution, it's been evolution. So that's a possibility. But yeah, it's not always the brand. I'm just getting
I mean, we've heard the term damaged brands.
Yes.
Can you give us some examples of what you think would be a damaged brand? Historically, of course, because probably not in business now.
Well, I mean, one of the really interesting brands that had a real big damage was Perrier. Do you remember there was a big scare that people found things in their water? And one of the things you have to do when you have a brand that gets damaged, or when people start saying negative things about you, is to really decide. First of all, are there facts there? And if there are facts, you go, we made a mistake. You have to own up and go, it went wrong. Sometimes it's hearsay and it's not real. It's just what people think. And then you have to hold your ground. And you have to have courage, because people used to say bad things about the big issue. Oh, they're exploiting the people. Oh, it's not this. And they just held firm, and what they did, they reinforced their vision and their message, and said, well, actually, look, when they went back to their customers and said, do you find this a problem, the vendors? Are we, do you feel exploited? If you are, what can we do about it? So, sometimes you've got to really get what I call in and amongst and sort a problem out if there's apparently a problem. But usually, I have to say this, is that usually you can find ways to counter things, and you can put out the good messages and get your supporters rallied and things go back. People have got very short memories, really. I think it's amazing when you think about things that happen with footballers or rugby players, and then, it's gone. So, one has to be careful not to overreact to things, I think.
You were saying about be willing to spend some money on things. We spent a reasonable amount of money on brand protection and trademarking our brand as much as we could.
Yeah.
And we did have a situation where somebody challenged our brand quite early on.
Yeah.
And we were lucky enough to have a good lawyer who sort of stood up to it and said, no, you can't go this direction, maybe on the brand, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So I think that's quite an important point.
Very, very important. And I do a lot of work with my customers about how you trademark. If you make something unique and it looks unique, you must put a design right on it. Very important that you register your trademarks in the trademark It's the old DTI, but I think it's the patentoffice.gov.uk. Really important you protect your things. And a very interesting thing, just to taking up your point, I work a lot now with licensing. So if you own something, you could license it to somebody else to manufacture, and you take a revenue. It's another tremendous revenue stream for social enterprises. And I'm just beginning to work with social enterprises on licensing things that they make and things that they own. And it's in effect what a franchise is. It's a bit like what Nigel was saying about the big issue. So, you know, very important. Thank you very much for that point. A really good point. Intellectual property, very important. And good that you took proper legal advice. You wouldn't not take it in a business. Even if you're a social enterprise, you must take proper advice. Because, you know, you will grow and then things can go wrong. So.
Social media, do you think that it's useful for all social enterprises, or is it useful more for, I don't want to stereotype. I work for an organisation where our customer is largely, I would probably say, middle-aged to retired people with a bit of money is our main market. Yeah. Now, I'm just wondering if with social media, if it would be that beneficial using it to target that market. I mean, of course, there are a number of people who use it, but largely, a lot of people don't use Twitter, for example.
I think it depends. You have to always, every business decision you take has got to have a reason. There's always a strategy behind it. And it's interesting, are you working with the people who make the nice wooden benches?
Yes.
So this Christmas, I am going to hand that leaflet to the assembled multitude of my children and go, here's a nice present that I'd like, because I get them to all club together. There's 2 of mine and 3 of his, so there's the 5 of them. So what's interesting is they will tweet it, they will Facebook it. They go, we bought for our mum. Guess what, mum? What does she want this year? It's a garden bench, you know. But it's really close to her heart because it's a social enterprise, and we're not allowed to bag anything that doesn't come from a social enterprise, you know. So that's where. So it isn't always your core audience that you use social media for. Very interestingly, I have people following me. I think, what are they following? But I put a lot of stuff out there, and then I get the odd email. Well, could you possibly? I don't know. Or could you speak out? Or do you know that? And so it's not always that absolute market customer. Also on Facebook, I mean, I do Facebook for my really true friends because I've got friends all over the world. And I will say to them, tonight, had a great time at the conference, met this lovely team who make these benches, don't you like one? Wouldn't you like one? I will then spread your message. I am in your target group. I am well over 55. And I have got
saying they don't use it, not at all.
No,
it's
but
just not in the same way as the 24-year-old.
And maybe it's actually better for them to do it because they're doing it with a good. Some might go, you know. So I would say that social media is really good for lots of things, but you need to think to why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and if what's really interesting is that one of the gentlemen that works with me, Chris and I do things together, and he does the social media side of branding and marketing. And what we say is you don't use it just to sell your product, it's to talk about the whole world that you're in, the social enterprise world, about what's happened today, and you can use it as an encompassing thing for the whole movement. And I think that's got a load of validity, even if you might not just tweet out, oh, this is our latest product. So it's how you use it strategically. And it's important that we use these new things, the newfangled things, because the generation coming up, and there are lots of social entrepreneurs who are under 40, they're using it, and we must be in the swim. So that's why I say, but it's how you use it. It's very judicious, you've got to be. Okay. Well, no more questions. I have to say it's a delight. I hope you really go away fired up with all the stuff you're going to do in the social enterprise. If you want me to sign any books, I'm more than happy. And I've had a brilliant time myself.
I'm gearing myself up for the big trek east now. So go well.
Thank you.
Thank you.